Hi everyone, my name is Jhonatan Bringas. I'm a medical doctor and a technologist, and today we're going to be speaking about IP. So we have here a really interesting panel. We have Deo Falzon, we have Cassar, and we have Tuomo Pentikäinen. Did I say it okay?
That's very good pronunciation. It's a hard name.
I'm going to leave this to the panelists to be able to introduce themselves one by one, and then we will start with some questions about intellectual property. Maybe we can start with you, Tuomo.
Okay, so my name is Tuomo, and I'm living in Helsinki and Copenhagen, and I have a link to Malta also. I'm chairman of the board of 𝐂𝐸-𝐬𝐴, which is a venture builder company. We have a booth downstairs, so very happy to present. But specifically, we have been working as a venture builder for academic spin-out companies, so even in innovations before they are companies. And specifically, we have been, for instance, helping tens of ERC, European Research Council, the very top research-oriented in innovations during the previous years. And maybe a kind of a preliminary info that we are just now releasing a small fund for early stage innovations, and very happy to tell more about that. In addition, then my daily life is that I have a AI deep tech company where we are helping big pharma companies like Bayer and Roche in anonymized data and synthetic data issues.
Thank you very much, Tuomo. Next, we have Ken. Please, Ken.
So my name is Ken Cassar. I'm co-founder, co-CEO of a company called UMNAI, and we're shepherding a very deep technology AI framework to the market.
Thank you, Ken. And finally, we have Deo.
Hi everyone, so I'm Deo Falzon. I'm a local IP lawyer with Fenech and 𝐓𝐞𝐻, and I'm here because we are constantly guiding startups with their various intellectual property needs, ranging from branding and to patentability of their products, as well as their own shareholder agreements and such.
So, Deo, I guess we will start with you because I think it's the most generalistic way of starting the panel on international intellectual property. So tell us a little bit about the importance of having an IP strategy, especially when we talk about developing medical technologies.
So before focusing on the medical technologies aspect per se, obviously as a lawyer, I need to sell you on the idea of, considering an IP strategy, because obviously that's where we make our money. But considering an IP strategy has its own importance, not just because it builds value, but also because it retains the inherent value in your specific product. So if you are considering an IP strategy, that means that you are looking out there, seeing what else is there, and protecting your own ideas. That means that you are safeguarding your own product from external attacks, for instance. So that is something that retains the inherent value of the IP. This is before even considering how to monetize the existing IP and how to get investors, etc. So I think one particular thing that is very often overlooked by startups is that they are constantly on the watch for what someone else is doing, or how to improve their own product, or how to get it patented, or how to protect their own brand. But they don't really do the homework to see how they are being regulated. So if you have an entity, if you have a joint venture, you really need to drill down into those things and see that what you're contributing to the company is will be protected further on. So, and that's where not even IP, it's soft IP, because it's the agreements that keep everything together. So I think that is core to start off with.
And probably also, freedom to operate, right? You want to know that at least you're not infringing on any violation.
Yeah, that's very important, because most startups would be very much aware of their local realities or the local context that they would be developing their own product. But to take it to the next level, they also need to conduct freedom of operate searches, it's known, in foreign jurisdictions, for instance, because obviously when you are trying to attract investors don't want to come in and find a blank slate. They want to be assured that when they're putting money, they are investing money to improve the product, to improve the sales, rather than getting what should have been there from the beginning in place. So if it's patentable, etc., etc.
Well, thank you very much, Deo. I think what you said is pretty much the start of how a startup has to start thinking. Sometimes there's an issue of yes, IP will increase the value of my company, but then at the same time, I don't have investment to actually get into these deep conversations, you know? So it's like a chicken and egg story. Let's just go then from that point of view when you're in a startup and a founder to a person that actually has experience being a founder of a startup, which is Ken. So Ken, tell us a little bit about your experience as an AI founder. What was your, let's say, your experience with IP protection, and how did you navigate that sea?
So it was a really interesting process because our company is founded on the invention of a person who created a very potentially disruptive technology around AI. And shortly after he kind of invented this, we prototyped it, we tried it, and we said, oh, cool, this works. We then kind of went, oh shit, this is really big. And what do we do? Because we literally did not know what to do. So we said, we need to patent this. And then started, I think it was about 3 months it took us, talking to a whole bunch of consultants and lawyers and legal firms. We had a very good legal firm in the US, who we still use today, and another global firm based in London, who we use. And then the challenge became kind of, A, what do you patent and what do you keep a trade secret? So that was a really important strategic kind of decision, because you want to patent enough that you're protected, but not so much that you give away the secret sauce. And that took a long time to figure out. And the other thing that took a long time to figure out was how to strategically lay out your patents. So we actually filed 19 patents in total. We've been granted 12 of them so far. And we tried to structure the patents in a way that would give us coverage, you know, across software, hardware, different application areas. And the second thing we then learned was how hard it is. I mean, writing patents is insanely hard, okay? It's like writing 19 doctoral theses. Kind of, it's that intense sometimes. And you need to have somebody who can do that. I'm fortunate enough that I have a co-founder who can and almost crazily enjoys doing that. But it's a really, really hard thing to do. The third thing that we had to decide was where to file first. And we went down the route of filing in the US first, because the US gives you the ability to file a provisional patent, which then protects your, what's it called? The date at which your patent will be applicable if you get it, okay? So we filed a whole bunch of provisional patents in early 2019, okay? And then it gives you 18 months to actually refine that patent and do your final submission. And then it takes a year or so. You got to decide whether you want to fast track it for more money or slow boat it for less money. And then there's all these complexities. But then once you get the US patent, then that allows, that falls under the IPO treaty, which then preserves that original provisional filing date in international patent filing. So then we went the European, the EPO route, and we filed a couple of patents in Taiwan, which was interesting because part of our patents touch hardware. So we wanted to be in Taiwan. But all in all, it probably has cost us now well over €1 million, okay? And it's taken a lot of time, you know? And it's a really, really challenging thing to do.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I am also a startup entrepreneur, and I see the amounts of things that you have to do to sustain a patent, and of course to get it accepted. I guess the one thing that startup entrepreneurs are sometimes wondering is, when do I give up? You know, you got a first revision, you got a second revision. When do I give up with my patent? And then when do I follow through, right? You believe in your technology, obviously, but then there are moments in which you say, well, you know, I'm just going to abandon this one. I'm going to continue with that one.
If I can add something as well, sometimes, you know, patent is the thing you hear about most when it comes to these things. But a patent doesn't necessarily have to be the best way that you can protect your product with. In fact, Ken mentioned trade secrets. that's not considered hard IP as patents are, but definitely some companies, some products might be more suitable for a trade secret. And then at startup stage, then it's even more important because a trade secret, although it's obviously not as difficult to maintain and process as a patent, but you still need to have certain controls in place. And from a startup perspective, those controls are often overlooked. So that's quite interesting as well.
It's completely, I mean, I agree with you. Like, they say sometimes like hardware you patent and software code, you keep it as a trade secret. And I think it's like a kind of like 1+1 algorithm. Okay, let's continue then with Tuomo. Tuomo, you are an expert on venture building. And we talked about IP, we talked about how the foundations of a startup. I'd like to know from your experience how important it is to have an IP strategy in the eyes of an investor, in the eyes of an accelerator or a potential partner.
That's a wonderful question, and I couldn't agree more about the points taken by the previous speakers. And certainly it is super important because it is so resource consuming. It takes time, it takes money, but time is usually the most important thing. I've realized in my own startups and also those that we have been helping that it can have several monetary values, not only the actual value of the patent portfolio you are having, but often it is so that the highly competitive companies, they are reaching markets that are big. It is hard to be recognized, and patents or IP, they have massive signal value. So that you are recognized that, okay, this team is competent, they are capable of getting important patents. So that is one part of the important thing. But yes, strategy is super important, and strategy is about targets and decisions, and you need really to think that what is valuable in my IP and what to do so that I can maximize the value of the IP, and then you need to be very clever and creative so that you truly understand how to do it.
Let me ask you something just about this, and especially about investment. So you can tell an investor that you have trade secrets, but they won't take it as nicely as they will take a patent application or a patent already. What do you think about that? Because I think that trade secrets, in a way, are more effective to protect you, but then patents are more effective to get invested. Do you have any idea on that, to give a little opinion?
If I start, yeah, I completely agree. Patents are maybe overvalued by the investors, but they are understandable and they're kind of tangible anyways.
My experience is actually a little different, okay? Because, you know, a patent is not a certification that a technology works. It's a certification that a technology is unique. You know, you can patent an idea that will never work. You know, and so a lot of investors, you know, they go, great, you have, you know, 12 patents, where's your market traction? You know, so I think it's a hygiene factor. I think, you know, if you don't have patents, then you might be looked upon less positively, but patents in and of themselves do not make the valuation of a company until somebody turns around and wants to buy you because of those patents.
Completely agree with you. Well, this is a really interesting panel. We're going to start giving some remarks. I would like to first ask you guys, how do you see the future in terms of intellectual property? We're seeing lots of new technologies coming up that haven't really been adequately thought for intellectual protection. So my first question would be for Deo, as a lawyer, and you are working on the IP strategies with companies. How do you see the future going on for these patents? Are they going to be still patents that will be filed in terms of technology or innovation, or do you see more usability type of patents, user experience type of patents?
Okay. I think this argument is always made when we're faced with like a new paradigm shift in technology. Even before, you know, you had the whole divergence between the EU approach and the US approach, whereas, you know, the patent texts per se have been written ages ago. So obviously, but law has a way of keeping up. I mean, the best way to do it, obviously, is, and that's why laws are generally, you know, written in such a way to be technologically neutral, we call them. And then it's up to the courts and it's up to the relevant patent offices to issue guidance, etc. But definitely, yes. I mean, what you said is about the usability of it, so how the claims are drafted in such a way to reflect the product rather perhaps than the product itself. And then you go into what Ken as well mentioned, into how to assess whether does a patent pay for itself, or whether you could just opt for trade secrets. From an investor perspective, obviously, patents are something publishable, they can instantly review it. Whereas as a trade secret, of its nature, it's a secret, so it's harder to prove that you've kept all the checks in place. So it's always a balance between those two considerations, I would say.
Yes. I completely agree with you. I think that's really a trick there. And what you said about law being malleable and being able to continue to evolve with technology, I think that's also very interesting. Actually, for the startup people that are here, the best insights that I get on new technologies, I get them from patent lawyers. Not from papers or from magazines, or I get them from patent lawyers. So it's really interesting because they know everything that's been there, that's there right now. And if you want to develop something with a technology, you just think about talking to a patent lawyer, and they're probably going to tell you, oh, this is already done, or and then you can actually think about giving it a twist. But okay, before we continue, before we finish, because we have some time still left, I would like to a message for the audience from the three of you, because your profiles are so different from each other. It will be very enriching to the audience. I'm start with Tuomo about intellectual property. A message for the audience.
Intellectual property is the thing that as a startupper and when we are making new innovations, we must take it very, very, very seriously, because it truly can make the difference. And I would like to maybe leave one word in your heads as a take home, and it is data. And we all have a lot of data, and that is usually very unique, and that will be massively important in the future. So how can we protect, how can we monetize, how can we utilize that in such ways that are making our companies winning and maybe also offering monetization benefits? So data.
Thank you so much, Tuomo. Ken?
So I remember something our patent lawyer told us right at the beginning. And he said, your patents are great, and they do not become really valuable until somebody sues you, or you sue somebody. He said, because if Google comes along and challenges your patent, and you win, you're gold. Until that point in time, nobody really knows what the value of your patent is. So it's kind of the courts that establish that value. But you asked the question earlier, you go, when do you give up? And ultimately, I guess, it doesn't cost too much to get to the point where you get your first feedback from the patent office. And your first feedback from the patent office is always going to be no, and here's the reasons why. First feedback from the patent office is never, yes, great idea. It's always no, here's the reasons why. And when you look at the reasons why and the prior art that they're quoting, that's really where you have to look down and judge, no, am I right or wrong here? And if you're confident you're right, go. And if you look at it and go, we're going to have a hard time defending this, then don't throw good money after bad.
I think you probably know already when you file your patent which ones are the strongest ones and which ones are the weak ones.
So far. So.
Yes. Well, Deo, your message to the audience.
I think from a startup perspective, I think startups usually, are rushing to quickly develop their idea and try to prove to as many people that they have something which is valuable. I think it's important not to underestimate how useful it is to take a step back at certain times and assess what you're doing, both from a perspective of what specific IP is best suited for that product, but also to touch upon what Tuomo mentioned, the data. So data is something that is very important when it comes to MedTech, obviously, because most of the products I've seen all deal in some kind of data. And obviously data, considering health data, for instance, which is sensitive data under various laws, GDPR in particular, have certain protections that need to be inbuilt into it. So it definitely pays you before embarking upon a whole process to really see that what you're creating can be in line with privacy laws, but because that will save you a lot of time and effort once you've developed it to redevelop it or make it compliant. So definitely it always pays you to obviously not pause or stall or anything, but do take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And the best part and the best way to do that is to, obviously you need to engage someone external, because internally you would be so focused in your product that you you wouldn't be able to tell the difficult or the negative aspects of it, you know? So that's what.
Thank you so much. Well, we get really valuable lessons from these three panelists. One of them is, of course, what Deo is saying about feedback from the outside. The second is having a strategy right before you start. What Tuomo said about the data is very interesting. What Ken said about you know when you're going to give up and you will know when you're not. And you have these three gentlemen here that are amazing contacts to have, and link with them on LinkedIn, ask them questions. They have a lot of experience. And I would like to thank Ken, Tuomo, and Deo for your time today at the panel, for sharing with us all your knowledge. And thank you to the audience for coming today and hearing us out. Thank you very much.